Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into some dense sources, pull out the key stuff, and basically give you the fast track to getting up to speed.
Yeah, exactly.
And today, we're tackling, honestly, one of the most unexpected career arcs we've looked at. We're exploring the evolution of actor, comedian, writer, Orville Willis Forte IV.
Who, of course, everyone just knows as Will Forte.
Right, Will Forte.
And it really is a deep dive into, well, a paradox, isn't it? Because if you just look at the work, the super bizarre SNL sketches, the absolute relentless absurdity of MacGruber.
You'd assume total chaos behind the scene.
Exactly. You'd assume chaos. But our mission today, using this really comprehensive biographical source we've got, is to pull out the truth. The truth about this, frankly, intensely organized, driven, and often terrified man who somehow went from being a financial broker to a critically acclaimed dramatic actor.
Yeah, it's wild. So we're charting that whole path, from a pretty conventional start, then those 8 seasons inside the, let's call it Saturday Night Live pressure cooker.
Oh, it definitely was.
Surviving a big commercial failure, and then finding this really profound, dramatic, and creative success later on.
Mm-hmm.
And the hook here, I think, isn't just, oh, he's funny. It's how someone known almost entirely for like high concept, super high risk weirdness.
How did he learn to channel that same level of commitment into finding genuine emotional truth in these major dramatic roles?
That's the core question, right?
Right.
We're looking for that thread that connects the financial planner guy who felt miserable to the showrunner working insane 12-hour days and, the comedian who listened to the exact same song for a whole year just as a challenge to himself.
Right. That story is incredible.
It is. And that intensity, that organizational focus, that's really the key, we think, to his versatility.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with that name. Orville Willis Forte IV. That's quite a name. It's got that Roman numeral.
It does carry a certain weight, doesn't it? It suggests legacy or tradition.
Yeah. He was born June 17, 1970, Alameda, California, which makes his early career path, trying finance, actually less surprising than where he ended up. His father, Orville Willis Reb Forte III, was a financial broker.
Ah, okay. Following in the footsteps.
Right. And his mother, Patricia, she was an artist and a former school teacher. So you've got this mix right there in the family. Stability, professional expectations, but also this creative side. It's a fascinating combination.
And there's that little story about his name, too.
Yeah.
Apparently he went by Billy when he was really little.
Mm-hmm.
But then he got teased at school because kids thought Billy sounded like a girl's name.
Oh, kids can be brutal.
Totally.
Yeah.
So he just decided, okay, it's kind of simple, but maybe it foreshadows him having to adapt his identity later on,
That's an interesting thought. And his childhood, by all accounts, sounds pretty idyllic, described as a really happy little boy in a very loving environment.
Nice.
And he was already soaking up the influences that would kind of define his comedy later. He idolized Peter Sellers, David Letterman, Steve Martin, and, of course, Saturday Night Live.
The holy grail for him, even then.
Absolutely. And the signs were there, right? He was recording these imaginary radio shows, pulling elaborate pranks. That sort of surreal performative streak was definitely present early on.
But here's the thing. Despite that creative stuff bubbling up, his first actual goal, professionally, totally conventional, almost aggressively normal.
Yeah, not comedy. He wanted to be a football player.
Right. And when that didn't pan out, he basically just followed the path of, least resistance.
His high school profile backs that up. Graduated from Acalanes High in Lafayette in 1988. He was on the varsity football and swim teams, freshman class president. Voted best personality.
Wow. So the all-American kid, laid back, popular.
Exactly. A total far cry from the anxious guy who later specialized in playing these super bizarre, awkward characters.
And that conventional path continued right through college. UCLA, got a history degree, joined a fraternity, Lambda Chi Alpha. And then came the moment, the big pivot point.
Yeah.
He decides, okay, I'll become a financial broker like my dad. He ends up at Smith Barney Shearson.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be it. The safe, respectable career.
And this is where the source material gives us that really crucial insight into what drove him later. He tried that path, the stability path, and he felt miserable there. Not just oh, this job is boring. It was profound unhappiness, a deep sense of wrongness.
Okay, that's significant. And what's really interesting is the trigger for change wasn't like taking an improv class on a whim.
No.
It was writing. He co-wrote a feature-length script just on the side while working in finance.
And boom, He discovers he loves writing more than anything. That was the lightning bolt moment.
So it wasn't even about performing initially, just the writing itself.
Right, and this is the critical point. People had apparently encouraged him to try comedy back in college, but it took the actual crushing weight of that finance job, the misery, to finally push him to make the change.
So it wasn't so much being pulled towards comedy?
As it was being pushed away from finance, repulsion from that secure path. And think about the risk involved there. Leaving a high-status job like that at a big firm to chase something he'd only just realized he loved?
Yeah, that takes guts. Or maybe desperation.
Or both. But it required enormous dedication, fueled by that deep unhappiness.
So he makes that massive pivot away from the safe world into the, well, pretty uncertain and chaotic LA comedy scene. That's a huge choice right there, and it hints at how he'd later channel that same drive into this new, terrifying direction.
And once he made that decision, he really did hit the ground running. Started taking classes at the Groundlings, the legendary LA Improv and Sketch Place.
Right, a proving ground for so many people.
Exactly. And he was tutoring kids on the side just to pay the bills. Imagine that step down from a broker's potential salary to tutoring fees.
That's commitment. And did that focus pay off quickly?
Eventually. His first real break into the industry wasn't performing live, interestingly. It was this comic book he made.
A comic?
Yeah, called 101 Things to Definitely Not Do If You Want to Get a Chick.
Okay, that title is pure Forte already.
Totally. And that actually got him noticed, landed him his first professional writing gig on The Jenny McCarthy Show.
Wow. Okay, so he's in the door as a writer.
And then came the call that, every comedy writer back then dreamed of, writing for The Late Show with David Letterman.
The big leagues.
Yeah.
This must have felt like validation, like, okay, I made the right choice leaving finance.
You'd think so. But the reality, it was harsh. He got hired, and then he was let go after only 9 months.
Ouch. Fired from Letterman.
Yeah.
Why? What went wrong there?
Well, I want to linger on this failure because it seems like it really shaped his resilience later. He himself called the experience unpleasant.
Yeah.
And he admitted pretty openly that he just didn't have enough experience yet. He felt he needed maybe a couple more years under his belt.
So was it just not the right fit for the Letterman style, or was he genuinely not ready for that level?
It sounds like a bit of both, but maybe more the latter. His natural style was already leaning towards the absurd, character-driven stuff. The Letterman room, especially then, was this high-speed joke machine, super topical quick punches.
Right, very different energy.
Very different. And he just wasn't seasoned enough yet to deliver consistently under that specific kind of intense pressure. He was quite honest about it being a gap in his experience at the time.
Okay, so that's the second major career rejection, right? First, realizing finance was a dead end, now getting fired from his dream writing job. What does he do?
He retreats. Goes back to LA, but he seems really determined now to master the craft that kind of chewed him up and spat him out.
Back to the writing desk.
Back to the writing desk and back to the Groundlings. He rejoined their main company, performing alongside people who'd become huge stars. Maya Rudolph, Cheryl Hines.
Wow, what a cohort.
Right. But critically, he also got proper staff writing jobs on established sitcoms. Third Rock from the Sun, that 70s show. And at this point, he'd mostly given up on the idea of being a performer. He was focused on being a writer, getting that stable income he'd lost at Letterman.
So stability returns. He's found his footing as a successful, reliable writer. And then
just when he settled, Lorne Michaels spots him performing at the Groundlings in 2001.
Ah, the timing. So just as he's maybe feeling secure as a writer, he gets pulled back towards performing. That must have triggered some of that Letterman anxiety again.
You have to imagine so. And the audition itself, it's become kind of legendary because it just perfectly captures his whole dedication to the absurd.
Okay, tell me about the audition.
He did several characters he developed. Tim Calhoun, the speed reader guy, standard enough. But the closer, the final piece, it was this deliberately, almost aggressively weird act.
This is the gold paint story, isn't it?
This is the gold paint story. He came out as this character, a gold-painted street performer. And the bit was that the character performs fellatio. Right. To earn money to pay for his gold face paint. And the core of the joke, if you can call it that, was just repeating the words cock and face paint over and over and over again.
Just repeating them.
Yes. Until they completely lose all meaning. The highest concept applied to the lowest concept imaginable. It's almost daring the audience, daring Lorne Michaels, to find humor in just pure, ridiculous repetition and awkwardness.
Lorne Michaels went for it.
He went for it. Clearly, he saw the potential for that kind of high-risk, boundary-pushing comedy. But here's the twist. Forte gets the offer to join SNL.
His childhood dream.
His childhood dream, and he initially turns it down.
What? Why?
He preferred the financial security he had writing for that 70s show. He was in his 30s by then, remember?
Yeah.
And he worried that the actual reality of being on SNL could never live up to the idealized version he'd built up since he was a kid.
Wow. That's the practical, organized side winning out again, even over his dream job.
For a moment, yeah. But thankfully, he reconsidered, realized his mistake, and joined the cast in 2002. Right as Will Ferrell was leaving, which was huge shoes to fill.
Huge. And he got promoted fast.
Yeah, promoted to full repertory player after just one season. So clearly, he made an impact as a writer-performer right away.
But the sources say his actual experience initially was kind of a disaster. Severe stage fright.
Yeah, crippling stage fright. And here's a really interesting technical point. The sources say he had to relearn how to perform.
Wait, how does a veteran of the Groundlings main company need to relearn performing? That sounds weird.
It does, but it makes sense when you think about the SNL machine. It's unique. It's incredibly fast. As a sitcom writer, you might have weeks to hone a character beat or a joke.
Right, rehearsals, rewrites.
Exactly. At SNL, it's 90 minutes of live TV. You're often performing sketches written by other people, sometimes with barely any rehearsal. He was used to having control over his material from the ground up at the Groundlings. Now he's suddenly having to interpret other people's words, live under immense pressure.
Okay, that makes sense. The sheer speed and lack of control.
That, combined with the underlying stage fright, just overwhelmed him at first.
And he got kind of pigeonholed too, right?
Yeah.
Because Ferrell left.
Yes. With Ferrell gone, the show needed someone to play President George W. Bush. So Forte got slotted into that role pretty much immediately.
Which he wasn't comfortable with.
Profoundly uncomfortable. He felt his impression just couldn't compare to Ferrell's iconic take. And because that was often his main role early on, it meant his own preferred style, those really absurd, high-concept pieces he wanted to do, kept getting blocked or pushed aside.
So that probably created this awful feedback loop, right? He's forced into a role he dislikes, which makes him more anxious, which probably makes it harder to pitch and perform his own stuff.
Precisely. It all fed into itself, and it culminated in this really terrifying moment during the 2004-2005 season.
The near firing.
The near firing. The sources confirm it. He was seriously on the chopping block after his third season. They apparently gave him 2 different 3-week extensions before finally deciding to keep him on.
Wow. Imagine that pressure. 6 weeks where every single sketch, every pitch meeting is basically an audition to save your job for someone already prone to anxiety.
It's the definition of a pressure cooker. You'd think it would make someone crumble or maybe try to change their style to be more mainstream, more palatable.
Who did he didn't?
No. And what's incredible is that maybe that structured, organized, almost rigid nature is actually what helped him survive. That same intense focus he'd later joke about, he just channeled it into sticking it out, trusting his own weird sensibility. He even estimated later it took him a full 5 seasons.
5 years.
5 years. So 2 years after almost being fired before he actually felt comfortable in the show.
That's incredible perseverance and that commitment to his own unique voice, even when it wasn't popular or easy. That's what led him to become the king of the 10-to-1 sketch, right?
Absolutely. Let's just quickly explain that for anyone listening who isn't an SNL nerd.
Yeah, good idea.
The 10-to-1 slot, it's literally the sketch that airs at 10 minutes to 1:00 a.m. right before the good nights.
When half the audience has probably gone to bed.
Exactly. It's traditionally reserved for the weirdest, most experimental, most non-traditional sketches. The stuff that Lorne Michaels maybe isn't sure about or knows won't play broad. It's kind of the penalty box, but it's also the zone of maximum creative freedom.
It's where you put Forte characters like Tim Calhoun or Greg Stink or the Falconer.
The Falconer, yes. A guy dressed as a falcon who only screeches. Perfect 10-to-1 material. It cemented his identity on the show. He was the guy doing the stuff that wasn't for everyone, but the writers and the hardcore fans absolutely loved it. It was indispensable in a weird way.
And that dedication to the bizarre actually led to some pretty significant moments over his 8 years there, like being in the very first SNL digital short.
Yeah, Lettuce with Andy Samberg. That kicked off a whole new era of comedy for the show, those pre-recorded shorts. So he was right there at the beginning of that wave. He stayed for 157 episodes in total, finally leaving in 2010.
Okay, so that 8-year run leads us directly to probably his most famous creation, right? MacGruber.
Instantly recognizable. That bombastic, mullet-wearing, always failing special ops guy. Based loosely on MacGyver, of course.
But here's the kicker. It wasn't actually Forte's idea. initially.
No, which is wild considering how much he embodies that character. It was actually writer Jorma Taccone, one of the Lonely Island guys, who came up with it.
And Forte didn't like it.
He was totally reluctant at first. Taccone apparently had to pitch it to him relentlessly. Forte thought the basic sketch idea was just too dumb.
That's hilarious. The master of absurdity thought MacGruber was too dumb.
I know. But Taccone eventually wore him down. The first sketch aired in January 2007, and it caught on pretty well with the audience. But the thing that really blew it up happened 2 years later.
The Super Bowl ads?
Yes, 2009. Pepsi sponsored these MacGruber commercials during Super Bowl XL3, and the absolute stroke of genius was getting Richard Dean Anderson.
The original MacGyver.
The original MacGyver himself. To play MacGruber's dad in the ads, getting that endorsement from the source material, plus the massive audience of the Super Bowl, it just launched MacGruber into genuine mainstream pop culture.
And that, naturally, leads to the movie.
The MacGruber movie comes out in 2010, and they had to make this thing incredibly fast, like 4 weeks shooting in Albuquerque.
While they were still doing SNL every week.
Yes. Simultaneously writing and producing sketches for the live show back in New York. He talked about just insane levels of sleep deprivation during that period. Just constant creative output on 2 massive projects at once.
That sounds like a recipe for burnout. But did he enjoy making the movie itself?
He seemed to love the creative freedom, yeah. He described the process as really collaborative with Taccone and director John Solomon. They basically got to make exactly the bizarre, R-rated, absurdist action comedy they wanted to make. Total control.
Which sounds great. But creative vision doesn't always translate to box office success.
No, it definitely doesn't. The movie got pretty mixed reviews, and commercially, it was a bomb. Pulled from theaters really quickly, didn't come close to making back its budget.
Man, for someone who just spent 8 tough years at SNL, finally gets his own movie based on his character, that kind of public failure must have been crushing, especially after the Letterman firing, almost getting fired from SNL.
You'd absolutely think so. Another big rejection on a massive stage.
But his reaction, according to the sources, was actually pretty healthy.
Surprisingly healthy, yeah. He basically said he found the failure okay to deal with because he was genuinely deeply proud of the movie they made. His quote was something like, "When you make something that you're really proud of and it doesn't do well, you can live with it."
That's a great attitude. That conviction probably saved him from just spiraling after that.
It had to be his shield, psychologically. And, time proved him right in a way, because even though it bombed initially, the sources clearly state MacGruber quickly became this huge cult classic.
Right. It found its audience eventually.
Exactly. So his vision was validated, just not by those opening weekend numbers. The cultural impact was delayed, but definitely profound.
Okay, so the movie comes out in 2010, flops initially, and he leaves SNL shortly after that. He mentioned reasons like hitting the 8-year mark, wanting to be closer to family on the West Coast.
Right, his sister's kids specifically, all valid reasons.
But the period right after he left sounds like it was rough.
Really rough. He called that following year an emotionally trying period, said he felt devastated that he wasn't on the show anymore, which shows how attached he still was, despite the grueling schedule.
And he thought his movie career was basically over because MacGruber bombed.
Yeah, he assumed that door was pretty much closed. Which, is maybe a reasonable assumption after a high-profile flop. This kicked off what he apparently refers to as his lost period.
The lost period. What defined that? Just struggling to find work.
He was working, but it was mostly these small, kind of forgettable supporting roles in movies that didn't do very well. Things like Rock of Ages, That's My Boy to Watch.
Right, I remember those. Not exactly career-defining roles.
Not at all. He even did a cameo in Grown Ups 2. It seemed like he was maybe drifting a bit professionally. The momentum wasn't there.
But there was one really important exception during that time, wasn't there? Something that kept him visible.
Yes, absolutely crucial. His recurring role on 30 Rock.
As Paul Lesname, Jenna Maroney's cross-dressing boyfriend, who also happens to be a Jenna Maroney impersonator.
Exactly. Such a bizarre, brilliant character.
Yeah.
And that role was critical because it was so different from the loud, often aggressive male energy of MacGruber or his other SNL characters. It showed this incredible comedic nuance.
And got him serious recognition.
Huge recognition. He got an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series in 2013 for that role.
Wow.
It totally validated his talent outside of his own specific creations. It basically signaled to the industry, hey, this guy isn't just the weirdo from SNL. He can deliver complex, funny, even kind of touching performances within a top-tier show.
So that 30 Rock role, even though it was just recurring, it kind of served as an accidental bridge, didn't it? From the lost period into the next completely unexpected phase of his career.
Perfectly put. An accidental bridge to pure drama.
Okay. So that Emmy nomination for 30 Rock must have given him, I don't know, a confidence boost, or at least made people see him differently.
It definitely raised his profile again and showed his range, enough that he was offered his first real, straight-up dramatic role in this indie film called Run and Jump in 2013.
And he went for it.
He did, but he admitted that the director, Steph Green, seemed to have way more confidence in his dramatic abilities than he had in himself at that point. He was stepping on the completely new ground, feeling pretty unsure.
That vulnerability seems key, being willing to trust directors who saw something maybe he didn't see in himself yet.
Exactly. But the role of the film that absolutely cemented this dramatic pivot came that same year, Nebraska.
Directed by Alexander Payne, a major filmmaker.
A major filmmaker. And Forte had to audition for this one, send in a tape. When he actually got cast opposite Bruce Dern, the sources really emphasize how conflicted he felt.
Conflicted how?
He felt, in his words, terrified to start work on it. Utterly terrified. And he specifically equated that level of fear to the dread he felt when he first joined SNL over a decade earlier.
Wow. That's really telling. After all that time, all the success, even the SNL grind, he's back to feeling that same level of rookie terror in a totally new environment.
It just highlights how different the skill set is, right? The muscles you need for broad sketch comedy versus quiet, internal drama.
Totally different. One is about commitment to a big, absurd concept.
Right. While dramatic acting, especially in a subtle character piece like Nebraska, requires almost the opposite. Stillness, vulnerability, finding small truths. He actually asked Bruce Dern for advice on set.
And what did Dern tell him?
Dern, the veteran, apparently just told him to look for the truth in every scene. Simple advice, but profound.
And that instruction, look for the truth, that feels like something Forte's hyper-organized, super-focused brain could latch onto, doesn't it?
Exactly. If you can dedicate yourself to listening to only one song for an entire year as a mental exercise,
right,
you can definitely dedicate that same intense focus to finding the emotional core, the truth, of a scene with Bruce Dern. You just redirect the obsession.
And it worked. The results were pretty stunning.
Immediate and powerful. He won the National Board of Review Award for Best Supporting Actor for Nebraska. Got nominated for an Independent Spirit Award, too. This wasn't just like, oh, hey, the funny guy can act.
No.
This was major critical acclaim. It fundamentally repositioned his entire career.
The guy who painted himself gold and yelled cock is now an award-winning dramatic actor. It's incredible.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how he leveraged that dramatic success. He didn't just settle into being a dramatic actor for hire.
No, it seems like it fed right back into his writing and creating drive.
Immediately. He took an idea that originated with Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the guys behind Clone High and the Lego Movie, and he attached himself to it, crafting this whole treatment over a single weekend for what became The Last Man on Earth. Which
Fox picked up, ran from 2015 to 2018. And this show feels like the ultimate Forte project, doesn't it?
It really was the perfect synthesis. It had that high-concept SNL absurdity. I mean, the premise is literally The Last Man on Earth. But because it's a series, it needed deep, ongoing character development and narrative arcs.
And he wasn't just the star. He was everything.
Pretty much. Creator, main writer, executive producer, and the lead actor playing Phil Tandy Miller. He basically became the entire creative engine and bottleneck for the whole show.
And he talked about how demanding that was.
Oh, yeah. He described being a showrunner as an amount of work I never knew existed. Said he was working a minimum of 12 hours every single day. This is where that intense organizational drive met just absolute sheer workload.
And there's a psychological challenge, too, right? Managing the writer's room.
Yeah, he mentioned that a lot of the writers were his longtime friends from the Groundlings and his earlier career, and he found it really awkward being their boss, having to delegate work, give notes.
Yeah, that can be tough with friends.
He worried about burdening them, or maybe seeming like he wasn't pulling his weight. So often, he'd just end up doing the work himself instead of delegating it, which, of course, just made those 12-hour days even longer.
Wow. So he's trying to keep that writer's control he's always had, but now he's also got the massive administrative and creative burden of being the ultimate boss. That sounds incredibly stressful.
Hugely stressful. But the results, they were fantastic.
Yeah, show was great. And critically acclaimed, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It earned him 3 Primetime Emmy nominations, 2 for his acting, 1 for writing an episode. It proved he could absolutely handle long-form storytelling while still keeping his unique, bizarre voice intact, all basically through sheer force of will and dedication.
And alongside all this leading man showrunner stuff, he's also quietly become this incredibly prolific voice actor.
Oh, yeah, his voice work is extensive. He was in the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movies. He voiced Shaggy in that Scoob movie. Tim Willoughby in the Willoughbys.
But there's one voice role he keeps coming back to, almost like a running gag.
Abraham Lincoln, yes. It's kind of his signature voice role now. He was Lincoln in Clone High way back, and then again in the Lego movie films, and even in that animated movie America, the motion picture.
It's hilarious. The guy known for MacGruber is also the go-to animated Abraham Lincoln.
The contrast is perfect Forte.
And his career hasn't slowed down at all, has it? He's still balancing everything.
Not one bit. He's got the main voice role as Wolf Tobin in The Great North. He was in Sweet Tooth on Netflix. And he's got multiple upcoming series, Bodkin, which is out now, something called Sunny Nights, and even Pixar's first ever animated TV series, Win or Lose, coming up in 2025. The guy just does not stop working. Seems like he hasn't stopped since he walked out of that Smith Barney office.
Okay, so given this absolutely relentless professional life, the fear, the failures, the near firings, the 12-hour showrunner days, we really need to look at his personal life, too.
Yeah.
Because that reveals the bedrock, the source of all this intense dedication.
Which seems to be this incredibly structured, organized core.
Exactly. Let's start with the stability he's found more recently. He met Olivia Modeling back in 2018. They got engaged in 2019.
And they got married in a really charmingly weird way, right?
Totally Forte style.
Yeah.
They got married pretty spontaneously on July 31st, 2021. Apparently, it was just in the back of Jorma Tacon's house in New Mexico.
While they were filming the MacGruber TV series?
While they were filming MacGruber. Perfect. So even the wedding has that touch of absurdity. But the family life itself sounds very grounding now.
Very much so. They have 2 daughters now. Zoe Douglas Forte was born in February 2021, and then their second daughter, Cecilia, arrived about 18 months after that. So he seems to have successfully built this really solid personal foundation amidst all the career chaos.
And here's a detail that just blew my mind about his commitment to structure, to having a base. Remember, he joined SNL in 2002 and moved to New York.
Yeah, for 8 years.
Well, 2 weeks before he moved across the country, knowing he'd be gone for years, he bought a house, a modest little craftsman place in Santa Monica.
Get out! 2 weeks before moving to NYC for potentially 8 years.
Yep, he bought his California anchor before leaving.
Wow. Talk about planning ahead. That's not just buying a house. That's like planting a flag. It suggests he always knew, or at least intended, to come back to LA. He needed that fixed point, that home base, even while his professional life was entirely on the East Coast.
It's that organizational mind again. And that focus clearly extends to his close family, too. His mom, Patricia.
She's apparently visited every single film set he's ever worked on. That's incredible support.
And he seems equally dedicated back. He officiated his sister Michelle's wedding.
And this is classic Forte, too. He filmed the births of both his niece and nephew. He loves documenting things, the history major in him maybe, applying that organized focus to the really important emotional moments in his family's life.
Okay, now we have to connect this stability, this structure, to the quirks, the things that probably fuel the comedy. His OCD tendencies.
Right. He's talked about this quite openly, even joked about it. He acknowledges it can be a challenge. He apparently took some questionnaires once that strongly suggested he should talk to someone about it.
Yeah.
But his perspective seems to be that he doesn't really want to eliminate it. He sees his OCD as just a fundamental part of who he is, of his personality. Not a flaw to be fixed, but just a feature. The thing that gives him his intense focus.
And that brings us to the legendary story that perfectly illustrates this. The song.
The song. It's unbelievable. He recounted how he set himself this completely arbitrary, self-imposed challenge while at SNL.
What was it?
He decided to listen to only one single song. The same song. Over and over in his office for an entire year.
Entire year?
What's
one song? Why?
Just because, as a test of endurance, as an organizational exercise. Who knows? But it's the ultimate example of that rigidity turned into this weird form of dedication. It's the same psychological engine, right, that allows him to repeat cock and face paint until it becomes funny through sheer absurdity.
Or that allows him to maintain the intense focus needed to run a whole TV show for 12 hours a day.
Exactly. It's structure and focus applied relentlessly, whether it's to endurance or absurdity or even finding the truth in a dramatic scene.
He even explains his gaming success.
Right. Apparently, while filming some movie, a good old-fashioned orgy, I think it was,
Yeah.
he achieved one of the world's highest scores on the classic arcade version of Donkey Kong.
No way.
Yes. Again, it's that hyper-focused dedication, that pattern recognition, that organizational skill, just applied to mastering a notoriously difficult arcade game. It all connects back. Hashtag tech tech outro. So when you step back and look at the whole journey, Orville Willis, Forte the Fourth, Will Forte, what really stands out is just the sheer, unbelievable range.
It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah. You've got a guy who starts out failing as a financial broker, gets fired from his dream late-night rating job, but then somehow harnesses the structure learned from those failures and the sheer intensity of his own organized mind.
To become first the ultimate high-concept weirdo comedian.
Right, and then somehow pivots again to become this genuinely acclaimed, award-winning dramatic actor.
And it doesn't feel random, does it? His versatility seems really rooted in something specific we've talked about.
It seems rooted in his willingness to repeatedly take on the challenges that absolutely terrified him, choosing the vulnerability of performing over the safety of just writing, choosing the scary subtlety of Nebraska over sticking with the characters he knew.
Each big pivot seems driven by this need to explore something new creatively, even when it meant facing immense fear or potential failure or just sheer exhaustion, like with showrunning.
Exactly. And that dedication we saw, whether he's applying it to, mastering a tough dramatic scene with Bruce Dern or leading a massive TV production or even conquering Donkey Kong.
Or listening to one song for a year.
It confirms that his intense, maybe even obsessive organizational drive isn't actually a barrier to his creativity. It's the fuel for it. He takes structure, applies relentless focus, and somehow gets results, sometimes through pure, transcendent absurdity, sometimes through profound, dramatic truth.
So the final thought we want to leave you, the listener, with is really centered on that idea, the power of choosing the path that scares you. Forte found his depth, his evolution, not by staying comfortable, but by repeatedly stepping into the roles and jobs that genuinely terrified him.
Right. So the question for you is, what's the one challenging thing you could dedicate yourself to right now? Maybe it's a skill, maybe it's a project, something that feels almost too daunting. Like for Forte, stepping onto that SNL stage must have felt, or leaving that secure job.
Could that challenge, that thing that scares you, be the very thing that unlocks some completely unexpected talent or depth within you? Just like it seems to have done, time and again, for the master of structured chaos himself, Will Forte.